So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of themes in this movie. You have just and I think you get this with, The Martian as well. You just got this, like, these people are worth saving. Like, we need to go save them. We need to, sacrifice and put plans ahead and works to go save these individuals. We got to get them out. We got to save them. We have to bring them home. That resonates with the audience. Like we kind of that's a movie theme you see it quite often. Um, and so they put this plan together, and even though there was different factors that was pushing them to abort the mission or to do a different mission. We get the storyline where Tony Mendez goes in, and they are now they're playing like Canadian film crew, and that's the story that they're going to say if they get stopped by the Iranians as they leave the airport. While there were some moments of tension, they eventually get out and they make it home. And we we definitely sense, I think, in the Canadian embassy, as these six individuals are there for quite a long time, just the psychological like pressure on them. Like it is like a jail
Yeah.
cell. They can't go anywhere. They can't go out. They're stuck there. And if they were to try to get out, they only get one chance at it, right? If it doesn't go right, they're going to get killed, right, as
Mhm.
spies.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so you could sense the just the pressure and the intensity, and as some of them are not really wanting to trust the
yeah.
CIA and Tony Mendez to get him out, right? And so you just sense that as you watch the movie.
Yeah.
Um, so I have some questions for you, about just kind of as we look at, we think about the worldview and how it connects to the biblical worldview in
Yeah.
particular. And there's what would you say, as we, and the Bible does present this idea of like who's in power. I mean, obviously, in when we see in like the prophets, while the Babylonians and the Assyrians seem to be these like powerful nations, or the Egyptians in Exodus seem like these powerful nations, we get a pretty clear sense that God's really in control of what's going on. But who, from the perspective of the story, who's really in power? Like, who's the real, like, when you sense like, all right, these individuals or these institutions are the power, like they're the ones that have the rule, or the authority in this
Well,
in the
yeah,
story.
I think under the umbrella of God is always in control, it's worth saying too, I think that um while that's true that he is, I don't think there's any promises for his people of, comfort and pleasantness. So there's no leaders that come into power or exit powerful positions that isn't under the mandate of God, whether they acknowledge it or not. Uh, regarding the political climate in the movie, um, it certainly feels like there's a mob rule. It's a little bit chaotic, um, but they are generally unified under the ideas that the Ayatollah is putting out. The Iranian people are desperate, for sure, um, and they're feeling crushed under the Shah's comfortable living, um, and you see that it's human nature. We get that in the States too. If you remember all the 1% and those protests, and there's been a huge, really surprising to me, but a huge push for socialists and even communist policies up in New York and California, um, the socialism is not the four-letter word it was, 10, 15 years ago. Um, so the people always, want to change, the grass is always greener. I hesitate to think that the regular guy in Iran today is happier than he was, in 1978. I wasn't living in Iran in 1978, but um, yeah, that I think that is part of it. And I just touch on the mob rule thing. The country is being run by mobs essentially, is how it feels. And I think people too, when they get into a mob mentality, would do things that they would never do on their own. It's very easy to be swayed by the masses.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's interesting about this movie. It's kind of almost has like an Esther feel to it, which also took place in Iran and Persia. That the two major powers in the movie are not shown, other than the montages.
Yeah,
Jimmy
that's true.
Carter is not
Yeah.
shown. Ayatollah is not shown. There's a great, when he's in the, I think he's in like the Iranian like cultural building. He looks over this massive picture of the Ayatollah, like looking down upon him. Like you definitely see like, and you can catch even Jimmy Carter's power when they can't get the airline tickets, right? And what do? They found a way to like get to the president, right? It's like those were the major powers as these other individuals kind of pawns, right, are kind of happening on the streets. So you definitely catch that um, that these two, you've got Western power, trying to having their own agendas, and then you have the Ayatollah and its power and its own agendas, right? And yeah, you do see like a mob, kind of operating in the middle,
Mhm.
especially amongst the Iranians, and even like the Iranian Republican Guard, right? They're just kind of like, they're one guy is running to the embassy and checking on it. They're getting little children putting pictures together, which is a very eerie scene. Watching these little
Oh yeah,
kids,
that's
it's
true.
awful. You're like, oh my gosh, that's just awful. And you have these like women speaking into microphones and holding guns, and you just see like, yeah, you very much see the chaos on the
Yeah.
ground, and then these kind of two powers. They're very much there, but not necessarily shown. You definitely get that feeling. We think about um, humanity. I think it is a very human movie. You see, you know, human emotions. You see personal, emotions with families. You got husband and wives being shown and their interactions. You have children. Um, you have people working together in office particular settings. What does the movie tell us about or show us about people? Would you
Well,
say?
I don't want to say that we lead a miserable existence, but there is a certainly a grittiness to daily life. And that intersection between that grittiness and that kind of that grandiose plan for rescuing the hostages is was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, again, like putting all those resources to save
Yeah.
six people, I think says something about the value of humanity, and
Mhm.
um,
Oh yeah,
and I
no
think
doubt.
there's a sadness. I don't know if you remember the scene where he's driving the first time he's driving in Tehran, and I think it's maybe when he's back of a taxi and he sees that man hung from a crane. Um,
Yes.
that's a which they show at the end of the movie, like that actually did happen. And you just see like your immediate like reaction to that is just horror, because like humans are not meant to be treated that way.
Oh, it seems surreal for sure.
It does, and like this is not a make believe world.
Yeah.
Like this is a depiction of a real event and real things happen, and so you definitely sense like the vulnerability of humanity, and I definitely that's a very much a part of the biblical story. After the garden, you see the very vulnerability of humans, that you Cain killing Abel. You see Lamech and his desire to have revenge on those who have mistreated him, and you just see like the vulnerability of humanity, the grittiness, the dirtiness, which was not the garden at all. And so that definitely does kind of show or really depict that there's something wrong in the world. And but it's not just in Iran. I don't know if you remember this scene. It's a great scene because it was very California. I very much caught it. Do you remember like they just bought the script from the writers union, and immediately Lester's character says, "Do you want tacos?" Which sounds very California. Like, what do you go eat? Like, let's go eat some tacos. Do you remember their like talk about like fatherhood, where Lester was basically saying like he doesn't talk to his kids, and of course Tony is, estranged from his family. And the Lester's character says, like, I don't know if you remember, he says kids need the mother, and you're just
Yeah.
like, wow, like even in Hollywood, which is quite different than Tehran, it's very bright and sunny, and there's still just something off about it that that's not right. Tony should be with his family. Why is he not with his family? What's like that's again
Yeah.
going back to the garden, right? That's the scene. So yeah, I
And the
definitely caught some of that.
kids need their mother and their father.
Exactly. That was my immediate thought. It's like, whoa, whoa. I don't know if I'd take family advice from Lester. So so that very much different segments of the movie definitely does just show human vulnerability, and our need for God's provision and protection. There is actually a quote in the movie. I don't know where it is, but they mention this scenario as a Moses scenario. Um,
Mm.
so in the story does mention kind of a biblical theme of the Exodus. So which you definitely catch. Like this is sending someone to lead somebody out. I mean, that doesn't get more Exodus
Yeah.
than that. It's pretty clear.
I would be very skeptical if the writers for this movie were intentionally, structuring it to model that scenario. Moses was kind of a foreshadow of Christ in rescuing his people, bringing them out of bondage. Um, that theme is certainly present, but don't you find it true also that scriptural themes are present all around us, anyways?
Yep.
Uh, I think that those are recognizable. If God is present in the world, um, then he's recognizable, and as believers, we can more quickly identify these things that are reflections of biblical truth that not everyone might catch unless they're looking for them. But those themes are present.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.